If you would like to know more about the plants, people, and places mentioned in this podcast, then go to our Instagram page at Plants, People, Places Podcast. That's at Plants, People, Places Podcast. Welcome to Plants, People and Places, the podcast in which we speak with plants people and find out what special connection they have with their plants. In this episode, we speak with the garden supervisor at Brodsworth Hall and fern enthusiast Georgina Yates, but known to us as George. George, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Morning, Philip. I'm good, thank you.
Good.
I'm in recovery. I'm doing well. So, yeah.
Very good. Well, first of all, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I think you've already said where I work. And yeah, I'm a massive fern enthusiast. That goes back to my childhood because the story I tell everybody, and everybody probably knows by now, but I get really bad hay fever. And one thing that I don't seem to get it from is ferns. But also as a child, when I went on holiday, I never suffered on holiday. So when I'm abroad, which is also why I like large foliage plants, but also tropical flowers as well, because they don't seem to irritate my hay fever. I live just outside of Rotherham. I have a garden of my own, which when I first moved in was a jungle, but in the wrong sense, in that it had been allowed to let go, and the couple that had lived here previous to me had got roses growing in it, and it was full of brambles and grass up to your chin and goodness knows whatever else. So yeah, so I set to and turned it into my probably more rainforest is maybe a better way of describing my garden.
Well, you know we like a jungle.
Indeed. I don't really go out and buy specialist plants that I've got to try and get through the winter, because obviously I work full time as well. And so I've got to take into account that having a family and working full time, I don't always have time to mollycoddle and wrap things, etc. So my plants have to be pretty tough, but we're northerners, so that's what we do.
Yeah, anything that's tender for you might be fine down south here. Yeah.
So go on, sorry.
So what originally got you into gardening then?
Well, see, I wasn't a gardener at all at one time. But then when I had my daughter, I used to work in retail. I was in senior management in retail. And when I found out I was pregnant, I made the decision not to go back to work, even though my job had been held back for me. But it was always my intention to go back to work full time. But whether that was in retail or not was another matter. And I was inspired by one of my friends who went back to college as a mature student. And I thought, if she can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
And of all the random things I picked a subject that I knew nothing really about, apart from what I'd learned from my granddad and my mum. And basically took myself back to college and studied horticulture. And I did that for 3 years. And then basically got into volunteering, starting a gardening club at my daughter's school, working at Clumber Park as a volunteer, and then at Wentworth Castle as a volunteer as well. And basically my career kind of sprung from there, really. So, yeah.
So how long ago was that then?
Oh, goodness me.
Gardening.
I finished college in 2012, I think it was.
All right.
So I'd say I've been a professional gardener since then. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's
I started. Sorry.
That's quite quick then.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I don't mess around, Philip.
No,
if I want something, I get it.
Yeah, I know. So, well, we're talking a lot about plants in this podcast as well. But I know that you love your ferns and everything. But what originally gave you that plant bug that you really like these unusual plants?
It was really when I was a child.
Mm.
My sister and I were really fortunate because my dad was in the forces. He was an officer in the army, so we got to travel quite a lot actually, and lived in some pretty cool places as well. And we spent a lot of time in Germany, but we also spent a lot of time in Dorset.
Mm.
And obviously, in those areas, you've got the really nice woodlands. And we would be able to step out from our back door into the woods.
Oh,
And
nice.
ferns were just, I was surrounded by ferns really from being a child because my sister and I would play in the woods for hours on end and days on end. And yeah, it was just, it's just like the fact that they can pretty much grow anywhere,
Yeah.
and it's their architectural qualities that I love as well, and the fact that they're so different. But a lot of people look at them and see them as grass, in the sense that it all looks the same.
Mm.
But when you actually get close up and personal to them and start putting different ones together, that's when you can see the real different sort of characteristics of them. And
Yeah.
I think it's that really kind of like, gave me that, shall we say, fern fever.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I love ferns as well, and
Yeah.
all the intricacies and everything of them. You can get like really bold, big leaves and really fine and intricate. Yeah, that is amazing. But if you, so I'm guessing that ferns are your favorite plants, then, of course, because you mentioned it a few
No.
times. But
Is that what
if
comes
you would,
across, is it?
yeah, if you would have to pick one fern that is your
I
absolute
knew you were
favorite,
going to ask me this.
come on, you can do it.
I can't. Honestly, I can't. Like, I'll go on Instagram and someone will put a picture up of fern and I'll put, oh, it's my favorite. And then in brackets, I always put one of,
Yeah.
because I honestly can't tell you a favorite. So I've got ferns of every sort of shape and size, from
Mm.
being really tiny up to being really big. Um, One of them, which probably really surprises people, and I think I gave some of mine to you actually, is the Gymnocarpium dryopteris, which
Yes.
is the really tiny little oak fern,
Yeah.
because that brings back memories from when I first came across it when I used to
Yeah.
work at Wentworth Castle in Barnsley. And it was my head gardener at the time who showed it to me and told me a little bit about it. And I was just fascinated by how this incredible tiny little thing can just grow like it does, but yet actually fill a floor
Mm.
almost.
Yeah.
Um, but even from being so tiny, it's something that you just really see because it
Yeah.
comes up in this beautiful lime green color, but it's so delicate. But then at the moment, I've got another really like favourite one because I really think it's adding to the jungle look in the garden, which is Matteucia orientalis.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because that develops these huge fronds. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I can't move my shoulder properly. That develops these huge fronds, and it just currently at the moment, I'm looking after one that's been donated to us for work.
Oh, nice.
I've also got one in my garden as well,
Mm.
by the way. But where I've placed it, because I'm looking after it, it's really giving an incredible jungle vibe at the
Mm.
top of the garden. And so
Nice.
it's almost like I can change my mind from one day to the next, which is my
Right.
favorite. So I'm not going to tell you that I've got a favorite because I
No.
haven't. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful actually. I once grew the Matteucia as well in at Hadlow College when I worked there, and I've never seen it mature because I left before then. But does it run as much as the Strythiopteris, the shuttlecock fern? Or
No, it doesn't. But what it does do is what I would describe as walk. It's
Mm.
walking through my garden. So,
Yeah.
where I originally planted it, because I think I originally bought it in 2012 when I went down to Folkestone for a trip to see my sister.
Yeah.
And my mum, myself, my sister, and my daughter all went out for the day, and we got into trouble from my sister's husband because we spent far too long in garden centres. And that's where I picked it up from in Folkestone. So it's been in the garden since 2012. But where I originally planted it, it's
Mm.
actually now moved further and further along to the point that it's almost pushing itself up the trunk of one of my cordylines.
Oh, wow.
So it is moving through the garden, but it's not actually setting out runners or anything
No.
like that. Not that I've come across anyway. So yeah,
I
but
don't actually mind the other runners of the Matteucia either. They did such a beautiful thing.
no, I don't. And also, I think if you use it properly, you can make it look like it's a river that runs through your garden, which is exactly what I've done because I've got mine underneath my gunnerer.
Yeah.
But also because it only has a shallow runner, they're very easy to actually take out as
Yeah.
well. So if they do start coming up where you don't want them to, they're quite easy to eradicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
That said, though, I've seen them on mass and I think they look pretty cool on mass as well.
Yeah,
But
especially
that's,
this time of year.
yeah, if you've got a garden bigger than mine, then yeah, you could probably do that. But yeah, I can't. So mine are under tight control laws.
Yeah. No, good. So we're also in this podcast talking about like memories behind plants, and maybe you've been given a plant by someone, or you got it from a special place, or it reminds you of a special place. Have you got a plant like that at all in mind, apart from the ones I gave, of course?
Fern. Yeah, the ones you gave me. Actually, do you know what? I planted one of yours the other day because I've been holding it and not knowing where to put it, and it's looking really cool now. But don't ask me what it is because you didn't put a label on it, and I'm not sure because I don't know everything. Yeah, one of them, I remember taking my mum to Harlow Car, and on the way back from Harlow Car, we passed a nursery. And my driving skills are somewhat quick, shall we say? So I slammed the brakes on and said, "Oh, can we go back?" And we ended up going back, and I found a lovely Crytonium, not falcatum. What is it now? Oh, Crytonium. Oh, yeah, I've forgotten the name of it.
All right.
Not No, it is. What am I on about? It is Crytonium falcatum, yeah. Yeah, I just fell in love with it, and it was huge. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it was about it, but that one in particular just reminds me of my mum and the day that I had with my mum because we had such a fun day.
Yeah.
And I'd also, prior to that, because she'd been looking after my daughter for me, I'd had a new shed delivered and a patio I put down and some new garden furniture. And we came back home and had a drink in the garden and dinner in the garden and surprised them with the new shed and everything. And yeah, it was just a really nice day. And so whenever I look at that fern, as daft as it sounds, it kind of reminds me of my mum, and it's really cute, really. So yeah.
Yeah, they are beautiful ferns because they're well, they're very evergreen, aren't they, as well? And I think it's called, is it the Chinese holly fern or just holly fern?
It's a holly fern,
Holly
yeah.
fern,
I think is it the giant holly fern, that one? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I do forget things, it's my age.
I don't think they mind slightly drier conditions either, do they?
No, they don't actually,
Good for a
because
fern.
yeah, it's struggling a little bit actually this year. It's very slow at coming out this year, and it's because it's been so wet. So I'm making sure that I have this thing that I do in the spring, that when it's nice weather and I'm wanting the ferns to come on a little bit quicker, I'll just give them a sprinkle with some water. But I've been very careful not to do that one because it's too wet, and so it's actually struggling to come out at the moment. So I'm just holding back a little bit on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, sounds good. I do love those. And as I said, I love ferns anyway. So we talked about loads of plants that you love. Is there anything that gives you a plant ick? So something that you really don't like? I know mine.
Geraniums. I don't like geraniums. I can't stand them. I think they're awful. I don't know what it is about them. I don't like the smell. I just think they're a bit. I'm going to offend a lot of people probably. I don't know, but yeah, I won't go into detail. I just don't like geraniums. I don't like the fact that they spread like they do. I don't like the smell of them. I just don't think they've got anything particularly beefy about them because I like big plants.
Yeah.
I like plants that are tough, and it's daft, but I kind of look at plants as a reflection of my personality a little bit as well. And oh dear. And yeah, geraniums don't really do it for me, I'm afraid. But there's many more as well. Trust me, there's many more.
Yeah, well, give us another example then.
Oh, goodness me. Oh, you put me on the spot now I've said that.
Well, I can tell you mine first, otherwise the one I
go on,
hate.
please do.
You can think about it. Oh, I can't stand camellias. I think one of the
Oh,
reasons,
really?
yeah, one of the reasons is that I've never lived anywhere where they will grow well. But even here in the village, they always look yellow. They have loads of buds that drop off, and if they do finally come out, usually the frost hits them and they all turn brown.
Yeah.
You never get a plant that has got loads of beautiful flowers, and even if they are out and not brown, I just find they look fake. They just look plasticky. It's like
Yeah, I
something.
know what you
It's
mean.
awful. Yeah, I can't stand them. Yeah, I have got quite a, well, not actually quite a long list, but it tends to be camellias is definitely at the top. Yeah, and in further
Yeah.
episodes, I will mention some others. Have you come up with anything else?
No, no, because you put me on the spot.
Oh.
I can't think of anything off the top of. I'll be about halfway through the conversation and then I'll think of something in a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Um, So yeah, you said about the smell of the geraniums, and I think like geranium macrorrhizum is a really awful one for that as well, isn't it? And it does tend
Yeah,
to
very. It's
suffocate
quite
everything else around it.
yeah, it's not very pleasant at all. I don't like it. Some people like it,
Yeah,
but then I suppose it's a bit like goat's cheese and whatever,
yeah,
or some people don't like yeah, whatever. Yeah, I can't
yeah.
remember.
No, smell-wise, the one that I really can't stand, and generally the plant I can't either. So I'll give you two this week.
Go
Is
on then.
Houtonia chameleon, that variegated Houtonia that spreads everywhere.
Yes,
People say it
yes.
smells like orange peel, and I just think it smells awful. It really makes me feel sick. And I remember in when I used to work in nurseries when I was like late teens, my first job, and I always had to move the crates of Houtonia, and I always held it so as far away from me as possible, so
Mm,
it didn't get on my clothes or anything, because it would be something I could smell for the rest of the day on me. I know I couldn't stand it. No, it's
yeah.
and yeah, there are some things with lovely smells, but Houtonia is, and the Geranium macrorhizum is definitely not one of them. So yeah, it's great. Also, one of the things that I always do is the plant of the episode, which you don't have to come up with. I've come up with one myself, but just wondered if you knew it. So the plant of this episode is Decaisnea fargesii. Do you know that one? It's a shrub.
Fargesii. It's a
Uh,
shrub.
yeah, it's a shrub, and it at the moment has these sort of lime greeny yellow flowers, quite a lot of them. The shrub
Yeah.
will grow to about 2.5 meters probably eventually. But the other thing it gets, which might jog your memory, is that it has these blue, like broad bean kind of fruit on it as well, which are edible. You know
No,
that one?
what's its common name, Philip? What's the common name of it? Do you know
Don't
it? No,
know.
you see, this is.
I'll have to look
I
that
don't
one up.
know it. No, I don't know it. Should I know it?
Well,
Should
I
I
think,
know?
well, as the plant of the episode, I think everyone should know it. But it is funny because it was one of those plants that when I grew up, it was growing along our drive. And it was literally one of those, one of those shrubs that you buy in a cardboard sleeve. So, like for a
Mm,
pound or a couple of pounds, although it was guilders in the time. But it's suddenly come back. A couple of years ago, I saw it at Chelsea in some of the gardens because it flowers this time of year. So, it's a really good
right.
this time of year. And the foliage comes out quite dark purple as well. And
You know,
yeah, it's really come back into fashion again. That one, or yeah, has had a revival, and yeah, it's doing really well. So yeah, that is for me the plant of the episode.
oh,
Yeah,
good for
look it
you.
up.
I will. Don't you worry.
If
I think
anyone
it's. I,
would like to see the plants that we've discussed today, you can follow us on Instagram on Plants, People, and Places podcast, I think it is even. But if you search
yeah,
Plants, People, Places, you will find one with plants on it, and that'll be us. So I'm hoping to put the images on there as well of each episode, so you can look them up. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe. So when a new episode comes out, you will be notified. Um, Lastly, George, thank you so much for doing this podcast with me. This is the end of it already. It's flown by,
that's
but
gone really quickly.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I thought we have to fit in so much, but yeah, we're there already. Yeah, it's been really wonderful, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And I can't wait to see you again and catch up a bit more about plants and possibly give you a nice Decaisnea.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Philip. You know you're my favourite Dutch head gardener.
Yeah.
I love you to bits.
Thank you. Love you, George. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Have a nice day. Love you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast has been sponsored by Newbury Farm Plants in Silsoe, Central Bedfordshire. Newbury Farm Plants for all your garden plants from bedding to trees and exotics. Newbury Farm Plants in Silsoe, Central Bedfordshire.